Well, welcome to this UC Summit 2020 panel session. My name is Kevin Kieller, and I will be your moderator today. Today, we'll be discussing powering hybrid work with Unified Communications as a Service, or UCaaS, for those of you who love acronyms, and in this industry, who doesn't love acronyms? As we head into this new year, UC adoption is a priority for organizations getting ready for anywhere work, which hopefully will involve some of us getting back to the office at some time. In this session, we're fortunate to have a fantastic panel who will discuss why UCaaS is the ideal technology for flexible and untethered work. In alphabetical order, we've got Andy Rawll, Senior Manager, UCaaS Product Marketing at 8x8. We have William Rubio, who is the Chief Revenue Officer for CallTower. Joseph Walsh, Director of Global Product Marketing for GoTo. And Jason Wyatt, who is a UC consultant with Audiocodes. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. And let's kind of dive in and kind of help the audience talk about UCaaS and hybrid work. Maybe I'll go first to you, Andy. Likely we all have, and our organizations have, benefited from UCaaS over the past 2 years. Now, that being said, I mean, we've argued in the session, or the session title argues that, UCaaS is a key, maybe the key ingredient to support an ongoing hybrid work environment. Why would you say that UCaaS forms that key ingredient?
Well, I guess if you look at the basics, work has become it's an activity in not a location, and the whole process of moving to hybrid work accelerated and demanded by lockdown and the situation we find ourselves in has given organizations pause to really consider that have we got a platform that enables us to be flexible and agile, not only to support our employees and where they feel comfortable working, but also an environment that enables them to support their own customers. From an 8x8 standpoint, our focus has been very much on customer experience and employee experience. So by marrying those together, you get the best possible end-to-end collaboration experience. So UCaaS has a key role to play because it acts as an enabler, and it delivers on not only the promise but also the requirements of customers that are out there.
No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. So thanks for starting us off. I mean, over to you, William. For the past 2 years, most people have been working from home, or a lot of organizations, especially knowledge workers. And as we head back into a hybrid working environment, hopefully, what do you see are some of the changes that organizations need to plan for?
Well, I think organizations nowadays, we're kind of living in this new reality. If you want to call it post-pandemic or existing pandemic or new pandemic, right? I mean, every 6 months it looks like the kind of everything's always changing. And the new reality is we're going to always have to live in this new hybrid environment, whether you're a small organization or a mid-size or an enterprise type of organization. You have to really make sure that you can adopt well. And we've all seen what's happened here over the last 18 to 24 months as far as the market conditions, with really it being an employee's market. And I think that it's critical to make sure that organizations, again, small, medium, and enterprise, are giving the right tools for their employees to be successful. And it's really about employee retention and being able to give them those right tools to be successful at their job, because we've all seen that the trials and tribulations of trying to bring on new employees and trying to train them, and then you have your back end suffer with your customers. And by giving them the right tools and really increasing that employee satisfaction, whether it is the right UC solution or the right CRM integration, what it's actually done, and I don't know if you want to call it inadvertently or not, but it's really just driven increased productivity, which has led to bottom line company growth. And the employers are now seeing that by saying, well, I got to spend more in UCaaS, I got to spend more in CCaaS. But at the same time, it's really increasing my employee productivity because I'm giving them that flexibility that whether they're on their mobile device, whether they're on their desktop at the office or working even from a remote computer or terminal from their home. They have the same tools and accessibility to really make sure that they can be productive in their job. And you're starting to see that actually provide bottom line growth to organizations by saying, well, wait, now my employees are more efficient because I'm giving them the right tools. I'm keeping my employees, and I'm also making my customers happy at the same time. So it's been really actually nice to see that change, but it is going to be the new reality, the new norm going forward.
No, that's great. Thanks, William. I mean, so I think the UCaaS can be a key ingredient as part of planning for hybrid work. And, I think, William, you talked about some of the changes that organizations need to make and should make. Um, you know, Joseph, from your perspective, what do you see as some of the key challenges in terms of implementing a hybrid work strategy?
Yeah, so I think William talked about, businesses experiencing better performance with people working from home and having the ability to have a bit of flexibility in their lives. And that comes down to what we see in our research is despite the challenges over the last 2 years, right? People have been happier with the extra time they've had in their hands because of not having to commute. Okay, so despite all the challenges, people have been given back about an hour a day in their days to invest in friends, invest in families, invest in themselves, right? So when the offices reopen, and I'm a bit like you, Kevin, I like the office, right? But I love the option of flexibility because my life needs to be flexible. I've 3 small kids. I work, a busy job. I work across different time zones, and I just need to be able to work wherever and anywhere I need to work from. Okay, so whether that's the office, whether that's at home, whether that's in a hotel room somewhere else, you just need that flexibility. Okay, so I think businesses are seeing that improvement in productivity because their workforce are actually happier. And happy employees are productive employees, right? So I think, that's the big reason why flexibility is going to stay because it's been really driven by employees because they fundamentally want it. And also it's a win-win approach because businesses actually perform better with that. When they're adopting that hybrid work, that flexible work approach from a technical standpoint, what we've seen is a lot of businesses just simply have too many tools. I think on average, over half of businesses have 3 or more UC deployments. It's a lot of toggling between apps for users and managers and stuff like that. So that's a bit of a challenge. Or they don't have their full communication stack in the cloud. They're working off some legacy infrastructure. The phone system tends to be that laggard that's not making that leap into the cloud, right? So getting ready, they need to look at how they can reduce the complexity of their tech stack. Start by reducing some of the tools that they have. Like a lot of the vendors out there now provide multiple capabilities. You can consolidate. You can get with a UCaaS solution, you can get your phones, you can get your meetings, you can get your messaging all wrapped up in one. You don't need to use 3 separate vendors for that and have 3 separate admin portals and stuff like that. So you can get more simplicity in how you do it. And if you can create that simplicity for where people work, no matter where they work, be it anywhere, you're going one step in the right direction of enabling a hybrid and a flexible workforce.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point. I mean, certainly, you bring up if an organization, if indeed or typical organizations have like 3 or more tools, that is complicated and challenging. I think keeping that in mind, Jay, over to you. We hear and we've talked about how UC is important, and certainly, therefore, UC adoption is important, getting people to use the tools, or, what are the factors and approaches that can help organizations successfully drive this UC adoption?
Thanks, Kevin. And I just want to say I completely agree with what Andy said with the first question. And quite honestly, as an industry, we've been banging the UC drum for many years. And let's be honest, long before the global pandemic. And I think it's taken a global pandemic to really bring the importance and benefits of unified communications to the forefront of many organizations. UCaaS has, in many respects, kept many organizations functioning with, having a disparate workforce. Some people work from home. Now some people working from remote locations, working from the office. We're moving into that kind of hybrid era. And whilst there's been, I'd say, an exponential growth in all kind of UC platforms, for many, this has purely been to enable a work from home policy over the pandemic and literally kind of peer-to-peer voice and video communications. So what we're seeing now is that most organizations are playing catch up in trying to kind of integrate or migrate their existing communication solution with their relatively newly adopted UC solution. So we know that organizations see the benefits of UCaaS. However, to truly adopt UC as their primary kind of communications and collaboration solution, they really need to go back to square one. Understand, what they have now, how they're using it. Are there other dependencies? A lot of these things are pulled out of what we kind of class as a discovery and planning workshop. And fundamentally, this is the kind of starting point for many organizations. The process focuses on the organization's environment, their network, their users, dependencies, integrations, devices, meeting rooms, analog integration, and I guess lastly would be kind of operational management. I think looking and understanding each of these will help massively with to identify key areas that need more work or consideration. And additionally, conducting a proof of concept or a pilot can also have be hugely beneficial before a kind of mass rollout. And I think the last point I want to sort of add here, and it's not a sell because we do this completely free as kind of thought leaders. And to simplify and aid this process, Audiocodes ran a series of workshops last year in the US, hugely successful, and we called them Launchpad, that took each of those different areas that I've just previously discussed, and we went into great detail about what organizations we need to do, how it will kind of open their eyes. Now we're doing exactly the same this year. We're kicking it off in actually the end of this month. It's English speaking, so it's available for all English speaking countries. Like I said, it's completely free of charge. It's aimed at organizations who are now looking at UCaaS and they want to kind of adopt it or migrate to it or integrate with what they've currently got. So, I think that's a great step really to making a successful rollout.
Yeah, and I think, thanks for sharing that. I think, you bring up a good point, which is, 2 years ago, kind of people were forced maybe with a week's notice to go and work from home. And so, necessity drove kind of the deployments. And there was a lot of things, therefore, outside the organization's control. But now as people migrate back to hybrid work, certainly there's still things you can't control, like somebody, an employee's home network or their Wi-Fi. But certainly the expectation should be that when you're on the organization's network or in an organization's meeting room, that those are more well thought out. So there's more use cases that organizations are going to need to deal with in this hybrid work environment. I think one of the things, Andy, before we kind of started the recording, that you mentioned is a real focus for 8x8 is looking a little broader than UC as a service, and it's also bringing some of that contact center as a service and contact center functionality more widely across the organization. I guess briefly, can you expand on that and maybe mention where people should be thinking UCaaS plus CCaaS?
Yeah, I mean, the way we tend to look at it is that we're in, I guess everyone refers to the new normal. Where we feel things are moving towards is the next normal. What is the next normal? And we very much take the view of, you look within an organization, you have individuals that have particular responsibilities, particular roles, and some are more or better or less well served by the technology that's provided to them, by the tools that are provided to them. So we think increasingly, and it's not just 8x8, though we know a lot of other vendors and providers are doing the same thing, is stepping away and say it's not just about UCaaS or the CCaaS or the CPaaS technology stacks. It's about how we as a vendor community can deliver a consistent range of tools and communications options that not only provide each individual within their relevant teams with the right tools, but most importantly, rather than being kind of inwardly focused, let's enable hybrid work, let's enable employees to be productive and happy, how do we then make these businesses thrive in the way that they deal with customers? And for us, it's about consistency of communication, it's about measurement, it's reporting. So 2 quick examples from 8x8 as part of, if you like, our XCaaS vision. One is is the democratization of the role of the receptionist. So traditionally, it will be a desk with an individual trained as a receptionist. Now, it's a function that can be assigned to any user, regardless of where they are, with a console that can be applied to them. Secondly, around quality management, speech analytics, traditionally very contact center oriented as a tool set for supervisors, to use as carrot or stick for their agents. But increasingly, that tool set can be used and right sized and implemented for standard groups of users who are customer facing, customer interacting, and customer satisfaction affecting, but you can use and apply the same tool set to enable that consistency of communication. And that essentially is where we feel the next normal is headed, and where, and by what we define as experience communications as a service that brings those two things together.
No, well, that's good. And yeah, see, we promised a lot of acronyms, so you threw a lot in there. I don't know what experience is. Is that like EX? I don't know. Like it's another acronym, but
it's very
I think okay, and it ties in, I think, to Jay, what you were saying in terms of like looking at the broader use cases and then matching up the tools. I think just quickly, I want to go to a couple of you. You know, the vendors keep adding more and more features to their products as they try to address, an increased number of use cases. Maybe it's, from a marketing perspective. Jay, do these features improve, or could they potentially be reducing productivity? And how do you make sure that all these new features being exposed to end users don't overwhelm them? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think all kind of UC solutions will come out with new features, new functionality. Users will always pull out what they need to do, from day one, and they will, get to grips with that, and they may adopt, some of these new features as they move along. Some of the new applications, I think, as UC kind of evolves, whether that's a contact center integration solution, a voice AI solution for recording calls, meetings, all of these things have to be taken, I think, in kind of baby steps, really, because I guess there is the risk that you could overwhelm an end user with too much functionality, that they would be a little bit like, wow, this is too much. However, we are in a world, an always connected world of applications and, with whatever it might be, messaging or whatever. So I think, the mentality has changed a lot. I think people expect a lot, or users expect a lot from, these kind of systems these days. And so I don't think there's that much risk of overwhelming users too much.
Okay. No, that's fair. I mean, Joe, but you talked about simplification, and I think you mentioned, like, if people have the three or more, maybe a typical end user, maybe not somebody like ourselves that kind of live in this technology space. Like, from a go-to perspective, do you see, do we need more simplification, or is best of breed and having a bunch of tools? How do you see that working and going through 2022?
Yeah, I think, the guy's such a good point. I think when Andy was talking about the customer experience and CCaaS and stuff like that as well, I talked about people using too many tools, right? But kind of ironically, despite people having too many tools, sometimes they're using the wrong tools or have inadequate tools, right? Like even in the SMB space, like the majority of small businesses still use their basic phone system for customer engagement, and they should be looking at contact center capabilities for that, right? That adds not necessarily new features and new functions into a certain product, but a whole new use case into the technology set that they need to deploy and use. And it kind of, unfortunately, is getting challenging, and in some cases, particularly for SMBs, where they're maybe under resourced from an IT standpoint, or their IT lead isn't actually from an IT background at all. They just tend to be tech savvy, and had to carry the mantle for that in the organization. I think for them, technology is playing a much greater role now in our communications, because we're less reliant on in-person meetings, right? So you have, how do we collaborate and communicate internally and get work done? How do we engage one-to-one with our customers, through customer service and customer support? How do we speak online to customers on large scale events with webinars and virtual events, right? And then you've got the IT team in the background that need to manage all those endpoints, need to support all these people in all these different scenarios, be it a home office or on site or at a customer site, manage all the different endpoints, manage all these bring your own device policies now because so many people have your own personal devices. That whole IT experience is becoming a bit of a challenge, and making that as easy as possible, making it as simple as possible to procure those tools, to deploy and administer those tools, and then to manage the back end is something that IT teams, particularly in that smaller business bracket where they're less resourced up and cost maybe is a bit more of a prohibitor, they need that all delivered in a simple, easy, cost efficient way. And I think we've a long way to go as an industry to get that streamlined for them.
Yeah, and I think thanks for that. I think you bring up an important point. Like, depending on if you're listening, if you're a small, medium, or larger organization, the IT resources that you have at your disposal are going to differ, and may very well speak to how many different tools make sense for your organization. William, on this point, there are lots of options, especially, in larger organizations in terms of interconnecting some of these things. How does CallTower, see some of the challenges, and working with your customers, how do you kind of help the customers figure out what makes sense and help them be effective, especially as we move to this hybrid work, which means we've got to deal with a whole bunch of different use cases?
Well, IT organizations over the last, I'll probably say 15, 20 years have really changed their dynamics, right? Which I think going back then, they were there really to be more in a reactive mode. And I hate to be this lame in terms about it, but to fix your computer, right? Type stuff. And now, because of the fact that they're looked at more as a profit center, meaning that they're working with marketing to do an e-commerce site and working with sales to and account management, and how can we retain our customers, they now have a seat at the table. And what that's really done is it's really taken away a little bit of their expertise, that they don't have the right resources or even the bandwidth on the back end to really do the research as far as what UCaaS solution they're going to look at, what CCaaS solution. So they look for organizations like CallTower to really come in and try to be that resident expert, to at least give them 2 or 3 solutions or options that they could look at integrating together. The tools, you had mentioned earlier, about the tools and the feature functionality. Can it get overwhelming? Absolutely, it can, 100%. And I think it's really comes down to driving employee or department persona and understanding and working with that customer to say what's right for your marketing department is probably not right for your client success department or for your sales department, but making sure that you're leveraging the right tools that work best for that organization based on the big landscape that you're given. And I think driving that home from the top down, meaning that employees understand that we're adopting this UCaaS or this CCaaS platform. This is the reasons why we're doing it. You get that buy-in. And I think a lot of times people miss that buy-in, and then you start to get the shadow IT, right? You start to get the guy running Renegade with his own conferencing bridge that he shouldn't be using or she shouldn't be using. All right. So you really want to try to avoid that by having that buy-in and making sure that you're driving a consolidated approach to the organization by saying, these are, I think, the tools based on your need on what work right for marketing, for any other department in the organization. I think that's key. We've seen some success around that as you continue to transition folks, whether it's into a hybrid or from a premise base into a UCaaS, if you drive that message home, you're going to get a lot more adoption than you would by kind of forcing it down their throat.
No, definitely a very valid point. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your expertise, your experience, and your insights around this, hybrid work and how UCaaS can help and may very well be a key ingredient or the key ingredient in terms of supporting hybrid work. Briefly, if someone watching heard something and they wanted to get some more information, reach out to you, how can they most easily contact you? Jay?
Well, clearly the best way would be to go to the website, www.audiocodes.com. If someone wants to reach out to me personally, it's just jason.wyatt@audiocodes.com. More than happy to help or point somebody in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Andy?
So naturally, we've got 8x8 website where you can 8x8.com, where you can find details of the latest releases, some more background and white papers on business communications trends. We got a new report that just come out, and around this whole experience communications as a service. So you can find details there, and there's quite a few. Probably the best step is look at some of that, look at some of the webinars that are coming up. But we'd always say, if you have a local trusted partner that as an end user organization, certainly talk to them and get some good advice, not just on the UCaaS piece, but on the broader piece, whether it's around Microsoft Teams integration, whether it's about integration with apps, CRM, all of those things. So we don't want to underestimate the value that our partner community adds.
Okay. And Joe, for GoTo or Log
Yeah,
Me In,
go
where should people go?
GoTo.com. Kevin is a good resource for
Okay.
everybody that wants to learn a little bit more, and happy to connect with everybody on LinkedIn as well. I push a lot of our thought leadership content out on LinkedIn, so a lot of people get information on how we're enabling flexible work with our flexible work software. So plenty of information coming that on LinkedIn for anybody who wants to connect there too.
Okay, fantastic. And William, how can people?
Yeah, same. You go to CallTower.com. We do actually have some pretty good self-assessment tools that are on our website that, based on your requirements, you can start putting in some information. We can kind of gear as far as what are going to be some of the UCaaS and CCaaS solutions that are going to be good for you. But just go to our website or contact us at CallTower.com. Works well. Same thing like Andy mentioned, we're very partner-centric as well. So if you have a partner, they can register the opportunity, and one of our consultants will be giving you a call.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, so once again, everyone, I'm Kevin Kieller. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter at @KKeeler. And on behalf of UC Summit, thank you for watching.